Doug Purnell is an artist of many decades, also a retired minister and pastoral theologian. Doug has been exploring over the last little while the movement from what he calls being to non-being, from life to death or through death to the mystery beyond. He's had a few friends who have died recently, one quite young, in his 50s. And Doug has been exploring in his art their lives and parts of the influences, the conversations of their lives have been part of his musings and his exploration of this journey we all must take, this journey through death into the mystery beyond, the mystery we don't understand. And in this work, we see this darker arch, a doorway perhaps, a doorway through which we move, a doorway into another world, another realm, another, who knows. I've also been reading lately that in antiquity, people were placed into tombs, which were caves basically. And they represented wombs, the wombs of God, if you like. The wombs of God, from where they came. And they're handed back, they're gifted back from whence they came into that being, that spirit, that mystery. And maybe that's a bit of what this is, a cave. But it's also, if you look down here, there's other colour underneath it. Greens and yellows and whites and this dark red and the darker colour is like a veil that comes down over the top, the veil between what is now and what might be, the veil between life and death, being and non-being. There's much in this art, in this work. And as Doug explores the lives of his friends and remembers, as he remembers the stories of their lives, people like Chris, John and Brian. Brian was the one who influenced this particular work. As he remembers their stories, there's something about them lives on in him, in his memory, his being, and in his art. As he explores the mystery of life and what it is to live and to be now and beyond. In the Greek, there's two words at least two words for life: bios and zoe. Bios is about biological life. It's about the flesh and the blood, the living physicality of our being. Zoe is life which may include the bios, but is deeper, richer, something more. It's a spiritual being, a spiritual existence. There's something deeper about us. And I think as I look at Doug's work, it's that Zoe that he's exploring. What is it that happens to our being? And what does this experience of life and death, of sharing the grief and pain of life and death and dying of friends and family, what does that do, and how does that help us to live more deeply and truly and fully? And as I look into this work, there's a light patch just here. And for me, it's almost as if there's a light through this veil that comes out at me, either pulling me through into a deeper existence or coming to me to reveal the glory behind the mystery that I don't fully understand or comprehend. The mystery in which God is. This week, I've been exploring a couple of stories. One in John's story of Jesus, and another 6 centuries earlier. The story from John's story of Jesus is, I find it very strange. It's a story of Lazarus. And Lazarus is said to be a friend of Jesus. Lazarus and his two sisters, Martha and Mary, are friends of Jesus. And Lazarus is sick. And his sisters send message to Jesus. And he gets the message, but he's delayed or delays. And by the time he gets to the village, the town where they live, a few kilometres outside Jerusalem, Lazarus is dead and has been in the grave, in the tomb, in the womb, for 4 days. And there's conversation, if you'd been here, he may not have died. You have this power of love of God, you have a power of healing, he may have lived. If only you could get here. And as they gather near the tomb, and there's grief and loss, Jesus weeps for his friend, for their family, and then he does something quite strange. It's a wonderful part of the story. He tells those who are gathered around the tomb to roll the stone away, and then he calls out into this tomb, Lazarus, come out. And then it says in the story that Lazarus, I don't know how he does it, waddles out with all these burial clothes on him and lives. It's a story that's larger than life. It's a story that we don't always know what to do with. Some hang on and cling to some miracle that Jesus can do this, isn't it wonderful? And others look for other meaning in the story or deny that and try and find the mythology around it. But for me, it's a story of being called out of that experience of death. Not necessarily the physical one, but the spiritual death. When the light of Zoe, the light of our life flickers and dims in grief, in pain, in struggle, we're called out into something bigger, into a new life. And Jesus calls us out. God calls us out and invites us into a new thing, to new life. And Jesus, of course, says that life is about dying and rising. Dying and rising and dying and rising. And we invite it into more and more, into deeper and deeper life. The other story comes from the people of Israel, or Judah, the southern kingdom. Their capital city, Jerusalem, has a great wall around it, protecting them from their enemies. But the armies of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar's armies, the king, come, and they come again and again, until they crash through that wall and they break it down. And they come into the city and they destroy the city and the temple and the wall. They leave it in ruins, and there's bloody battles happening all over the place. And they take the leading citizens and craftspeople off into exile into Babylon, modern day Iraq. And it creates quite a crisis in their life. There's grief, there's pain. How can we sing the Lord's song? How can we live in this strange land of Babylon for those who have gone there? But the people who are left behind, how can we live? We have nothing. And into this crisis step many prophets sent by God to bring a word of life and hope. And one is Ezekiel. And Ezekiel, in speaking to this people, is given a vision. And in this vision, he's taken down into a valley. And maybe it was one of the valleys around Jerusalem. A valley where the fighting had happened. He's taken down, and there's bones, skeletons everywhere. And in this vision, God speaks to him and says, Son of man, can these bones live? Can these bones live? And he says, only you know, Lord, only you know. God says to him, prophesy that those bones will be joined together. And so he speaks this word on behalf of God. And there's this great rattle in his vision, in this valley, as the bones join together. You know the song, dry bones, them bones, them. I hear the word of the Lord. The foot bones connect to the ankle bone to the leg bone or the knee bone. The skeletons reform. And then he says, prophesy, son of man, prophesy that there'll be flesh, sinews and muscle and skin over these bodies. And he prophesies, and there is. And there's this valley of dead bodies, lifeless bodies. And he says, son of man, prophesy. Prophesy that the four winds will come, the Spirit will blow, ruach, pneuma, Spirit will come and blow through them. Like that creation story where God breathes the Spirit into those early man and woman. Breathe the life into them. And so he prophesies, and there's this great wind that howls down through the valley and animates these bodies, giving them life. And he says, son of man, this valley, these dry bones, these dead bodies, that's your nation, that's your people. Go and tell them that I, the Lord, will bring life, will breathe life and Spirit into them. Can these bones live? Yes. Yes, says the Lord. I think these stories for me are about inviting me out of those things in my experience of life that deny me life. That tie me down, that drain the life from me. That make that Zoe, that exuberant, deep, wondrous life dull and depressed and anxious and afraid. It's as if God is saying, come out of the tomb, allow that light to fill your life. Come and live. And I think that's what Doug is doing in exploring the death of his friends, their lives and what they mean and what they brought to him. And exploring this mystery into which we are born and grow and live and return, the mystery of this womb of the divine, of God, who is love and who holds us in our bios, in our life here, and fills us with Zoe, Spirit, life, fullness, and holds us in the mystery beyond life and death, to the new thing beyond the veil of knowing and being. And in our daily lives, when we encounter stuff that is just too hard, when we feel lifeless and tired and worn out and afraid, God calls us forth into new life and puts new life within us. It's a life of love, of hope, of faith.